It's Richard Gilliver, everybody. Richard, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I am so excited about being here.
I am so excited that you are here, Richard. So, Richard, you have been a volunteer with the ACA for a little bit now. You have been featured on several episodes of the nonprofits, and you also mod some of the Facebook groups that we do. Just tell us about yourself. Who's the real Richard Gilliver? That's what I want.
Oh, that's a question. The real Richard Gilliver is a man who has many facets. So we'll ignore most of them, and we'll stick with the kind of skepticism stuff. I've been talking to religious people and people who believe in ghosts and in UFO visits to Earth and things like that for about 28 years. I'm an old man, and as you can tell by the grey in my beard, and I love it. And I've been doing it on and off. I used to do it before the internet days by going and speaking to people in the street, talking to people who had like the religious stalls, or if I've met anyone outside of a church or handing Bibles out, just speaking to people like that, the good old-fashioned way. And then the internet came along, and in the old days it was chat rooms, and so you'd nip into the like religious chat rooms on various forums and talk to people like that. And then I got married and took a bit of time off from doing it. I got a bit disillusioned with the kind of atheist movement in Britain, and then I was watching YouTube and I came across Matt Dillahunty and the Atheist Experience. So I kind of hunted out the Facebook group, interacted on that just as a regular member of the Facebook group. And then I started getting really into a show called Talk Heathen. And I had this little notion that there wasn't a Facebook group for Talk Heathen. So I contacted Tangel, right, who's the ACA volunteer coordinator. And I asked her if there was a Facebook group or any plans for a Facebook group. And she said, if you want to do it, then it's yours. And that's how I got into the volunteering. I became an admin for the Talk Heathen group. Originally, there was me, best name ever, and Tangel Wright. We had 3 members. And then over the next week, it went to 100, 200, and it began to grow. We sent a gift out to the 1,000th member. And I
didn't know about that. That's awesome.
Yeah. And then slowly Tangel took some time off, so I kind of took over being the admin for all the Facebook groups. And now we've got a team of Tangel's come back. We've got a team of 4 admins now who kind of make all the decisions between us, and it's fantastic. It's a wonderful kind of little group. We've got some awesome volunteers. So I'm the complaints man. So if you ever have any complaints, it's me you come to. It's good. It's a wonderful community. So I've been doing the ACA stuff behind the scenes for a long time now. So
and there's literally dozens of people that do stuff behind the scenes for the ACA. It's really, really awesome. When we thank the crew every single week at the end of the shows, we're not just blowing smoke. Like, everybody that works behind the scenes works so diligently and so hard to make all of our productions happen. So it's always really, really cool when we get to have conversations with folks who are typically more behind the scenes. Although, Richard, you have been more and more, in the public eye, I would say, especially with your debut tonight on, Truth Wanted. I should also point out as well that the groups that we're talking about are fan-run groups, meaning that they aren't officially ACA. They're not run by the board of directors or anything like that. There's no decisions there. They're totally fan-run groups that hosts like to make appearances on and have conversations with folks there and stuff. So it is an interesting dynamic for sure. So what do you think is the advantage now from talking to people on the street in the 90s versus talking to random strangers online in Facebook groups now? Is it worse? Is it better? What's the difference?
Oh, there's pros and cons to it. I will always default to talking to people in person. I prefer for one thing, you get that emotional interaction that you can't get through typing messages. And whether it's people calling in this format that's coming, especially since the pandemic, and this has taken off more and more, and this is great. But you can't beat talking to people in person and just sitting there and having a respectful conversation with them. I love it. One thing you do get, one thing the internet does have an advantage over when you're in the forums and the groups is that you can keep a track of conversations. And if somebody wants to gish gallop, that's for someone who doesn't know what that is, that's when they're trying to avoid being pinned down by just throwing fact after or idea. They're not usually facts. It's like claim after claim after claim after claim out, so you can't pin them down. One thing typing things out does allow you to do is, grab those things, screen grab those things or quote those things and go back to it and pin them down on a particular point.
Right. Yeah, there's definitely like some advantages and disadvantages that, I mean, I've noticed. So one of them, of course, as you mentioned, being an advantage of talking in person is you get to build that rapport with somebody, right? You get to establish that face-to-face contact, that relationship. You can read body language in a way that you really just can't do on the internet, right? But a disadvantage of that also is if you're caught off guard with something, you have to respond right then and there to something that you may not be ready to answer to. So there's people, and I'm gonna throw out a name here, okay? Like Ray Comfort. Okay, Ray Comfort does this all the time. If you've ever seen videos of him, he's a Christian apologist who will talk to people and ask people, if they are bad people or if they're good people, and he'll ask them if they believe in sin and all this stuff. And obviously for folks like us, it's not a big deal, maybe because we literally have these conversations, if not every week, then every day, right? But if you're just a person on the street, you might be caught off guard by some of these arguments, and it may kind of confuse you in a way that you may not understand how to respond. Whereas on the internet, you have some time to kind of look into things, fully type out your response, but it also means you can be victim to kind of the gish gallop, right, that you're talking about, where somebody can just throw a whole paragraph of BS that makes it really hard to kind of counter all at once without like wasting your whole day away gathering sources and probably giving a response that's proper due sometimes. So shout out to the folks that do take the time to do that and are willing to have those conversations, because when you have those conversations out there online, then other people can read it and then maybe learn something from it. I know I've definitely learned a thing or two from these kinds of debates, but obviously there, like you said, there's advantages and disadvantages to that kind of discourse, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think you brought up an interesting point about being caught off guard. And I think that's where skepticism comes in. That's where, practicing skepticism is really helpful there. Because I think if you watch people in these conversations with people like Ray Comfort, you tend to get three types of people. You get people who were just, they may have just never even thought about it. So being caught off guard is really takes them back and is a massive disadvantage for them. Or you get the people who have well-practiced arguments. They may be, let's say, for example, the fans of the ACA, and they listen to ObjectivelyDan speaking on Truth Wanted every week, and they hear what you say, but they don't really think about the arguments. They just repeat those arguments. And they can be caught off guard too, because if things are brought up that they've not heard Dan say on Truth Wanted, then they can get stuck as well. Whereas if you're a skeptic, it's very easy to be comfortable saying, I do not know, without feeling like you're caught off guard. And I think that comes across. I think there's a difference between standing there and going,
Right, definitely. Looks like Richard is going to be joining us back in just a second here. But I agree with his point in that you don't want to be caught off guard when you're having these conversations. And people who are really interested in talking about these kinds of subjects, they're going to be the ones who are going to be more researched on this stuff. They're going to be ones who might be familiar with some of the background topics that are discussed in these kinds of things. But for the average person, they may not be ready for that sort of thing, but it shouldn't matter, right? It really shouldn't matter if we're willing to just say, I don't know how to respond to that, or I have to get back to you at a different time, right? That's an honest thing to say, but sometimes that's hard to do. That can take a little bit of humility when you're talking with somebody like that. So anyway, very difficult to have those kinds of conversations if you're going into it thinking you're going to come in and do a WWE super slam on your interlocutor, right? Obviously, I am an advocate for street epistemology, which means that you can be ignorant on a whole bunch of stuff and still are able to have great conversations with people, because you don't have to be an expert on these kinds of things.